which is, yeah.
We're trying to be accommodating here.
You are very.
Also, this is Lewis, and he does Kubernetes things.
Yeah. I break clusters. Cool. Thank you for the intro. I think Andy's here as well, so I realized that the party last night, it was all kinds of epic. So if you need a sugar rush, he can supply you with some red M&Ms now and some macarons. And equally, there's some ibuprofen there as well, as long as you trust the supply chain of Andy delivering it to you. So, right, we'll get started now. This was already, we're going great. I haven't connected this to my computer. So that's why we have these slides at the start, just to make sure we get started. I was at the keynote yesterday, and it was mentioned that everybody belongs, sorry. So Vi and I have got to know each other, and I've said to Vi, I've never really identified with anyone else in the industry. And at the time, I've suffered from depression in the past, because I always felt like the odd one out in the room. And it got tough at times, and so seeing the mental health hackers village on the other side of this room is epic. It's the stuff I really needed. I'm not here to preach about this, and equally I understand that some people don't understand depression. If you don't, I still advise you go and have a look. The thing that really helped me was when I had people say to me, who I absolutely respect, they said, I don't have depression, but I care about you and I want to understand why you're going through pain. So yes, I recommend that. And equally on this note, I just want to say thank you to the organizers as well, because you've done such a lovely, sterling job here. As you can tell by my accent, I'm not from this area of the world. And so coming here, it's just feeling like family straight away. And so everyone's been so kind to us. And yeah, so I just want to say thank you for that. And my clicker is not working there, so let's go. There we go. Yes, and so equally, from where I am, I'm from Cardiff in Wales. Every time I've spoken to someone, it seems like your great-great-great-grandparents came from Wales. We've got this charity called Head Above the Waves, and their slogan is self-love is punk rock. And I completely forgot to buy the t-shirt and bring it with me, but I just wanted to make sure we had that statement. Oh, I didn't set this up. Now, I'm a little bit older nowadays, and I met Vi earlier on this week, so we met on Wednesday.
Yeah, that's when the training started.
Yeah, that's when we had our training, and so we were out at the bar on Thursday night, and then you were saying, well, I want to know this and this and this from your talk. Well, why don't you just come on stage, and then you can do this and this and this on this talk. So that's why we're here together. So this is me, I'm Lewis, he, him, and that's my Twitter handle. I'm at Denham-Parry. I'm the head of training at a company called Control Plane, and I'm the curator of GIFs. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Vi.
Hi, my name's Vi. I took the Kubernetes training, and now I'm up on stage somehow. I work for a company leading a research and development sub-program for a security team. That's really it.
And you're awesome. You're supreme. Cool. This is my company slide deck. You might know us from such places as leaving the building. As you can see, we're the only sticker on the floor there. We are Control Plane. We do DevSecOps. We do everything from consulting to training, everything else. And if you went to Andy's talk yesterday, or you went to a book signing, you would have seen he's got the book Hacking Kubernetes. This is a great tool to use. We have so much help in the industry, and we put a foothold as to what we think the best practices are. We're going to go through a couple of these today. We will get there in a moment. It's, as a speaker, like meeting you all for the first time, it's a little bit nervous. Like, I'm used to just being in my spare room with a screen, and like after 2 years, being in a room with lots of people. So we're going to do a bit of a previously in cloud native. This is going to be a little bit interactive. So can anyone tell me if you can figure out that resolution what this is? I told you everyone would know this. I told you.
I don't know this.
I told you. It's Borg. So why might that be referencing Borg? Yeah, okay, so Borg. So Borg, as a character within Star Trek in simulated alien races, had a hive mind. So its decision-making, it brought it all together, and it was attempting to scale rapidly across the universe. So this is in reference to Google Borg. So if you use anything from Google, whether it be search or G Suite or YouTube, they create a Borg to manage that high availability at scale. So with that, can anyone tell me who this is? I won that bet. So why is 7 of 9 important with the Borg? Yeah, so 7 of 9 was the first kind of person to leave the Borg. And so from Borg within Google, there's a project called Project 7. And it wasn't Borg. Project 7 was taking the learnings that they had and making it available. Right. In the UK, we have this game show called Catchphrase. So what I'd like you to do is, can you tell me what this is?
Q.
Yes, thank you. So we got Q. What else we got?
Kubernetes.
Cube. Kubernetes. So, and at this point, I'd like to pass it over to V.
Yeah, I just have to make fun of Kubernetes for a second, because we have another Kubernetes talk. There was a training, there was one yesterday, and now we're talking about a generic DevOps buzzword again. So everyone made fun of Node.js back in 2017. Now we need to make fun of Kubernetes more. And if you look at the way that applications are in the industry, they're moving from on-prem data centers with monolithic applications into containerized workloads on the cloud. And so due to this type of change of the industry, I think we should start making more Kubernetes memes and hacking it better. And this is really a psyop for SE Linux propaganda by the end of the day. And you know, Kubernetes, it's just server containers all the way down, turtles all the way down. So, you know, Alpine Linux and BusyBox are very stripped down distros, fantastic flavors of Linux. Like Amazon Linux 2 is like okay, but Alpine is a great distro. So this is shilling for Alpine as well as, once again, stock to save at selinux.com. So I think we can move on to the actual content. And so we're kind of the squirrel there, like misconfigured, like about leveraging misconfigurations. And then the hand that's bleeding, you know, that's bleeding secrets, permissions. The blood is the data exfil, and I guess Kubernetes is the hand, if that makes sense?
Yeah. No, I just picked a gift of a squirrel biting a finger. No, I think that probably shows a lot more. Yeah, so we're going to be focusing on a scenario. So we've been doing some CTFs for this conference called KubeCon. We help run the CTF Security Days. So we're going to do live demos of our CTF, showing you all the flags. We got other ones you can try out. If you want to have a go for, do you have to turn something in giggles? Because I think this is going on YouTube, so I think I can't say that word. That means we're just doing this for fun. Cool, so let's start with the science.
Yes, so noticed a lot of veterans, thank you for serving, and so everyone was vibrant, right? Like we want to map abstract attack paths because no one really knows what Kubernetes is by the end of the day, unfortunately, and we want to kind of talk about how do we start from an initial foothold to exploitation, dropping payloads, and getting data exfil. So in this demo, we can talk about, as we go through the demo, kind of how the initial access to mitigations to, you know, lateral movement and impact in the cluster. But do you want to talk about the green and red coloring?
Yeah, definitely. Kubernetes is constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. So the red that we see here, this report was from last year. So the red shows the deprecated techniques from the 2020 report. I understand it's probably not easy to see, but you'll have access to these slides afterwards. But it's the exposed dashboard, access to Kubernetes dashboard. Incidentally, if you're interested in that talk, go to Ryan's talk at 11:15 or around that time. You'll be talking about how to look at that. But we've got a number of attacks here, and we're going to go through a couple of them. It's exposed sensitive interfaces, which is something I will probably look at now. But yes, we can discuss these more in detail as we go along in our journey.
Right, and I think a really good thing to call out here is that this attack, these attack options are so similar to just like the classic client server application. So there's really no smoke and mirrors when it comes to Kubernetes. You're gonna hack it just like you do most other Linux server-based attack surfaces. But if you look here in each column, you can also have multiple ones, right? So you could have an application vulnerability that has an exposed sensitive interface, like you have a management or admin thing, publicly exposed. It has a web application vulnerability in Nginx, and then you're able to move on to get like credits to go to, or credentials to go and pivot to other resources. So you can definitely chain, as we see there are multiple like bullet points in that one column. So it's really interesting to mix and match and see what you could do. It's really a choose your own adventure. But I think that's all I have to say on my part.
Yeah, and potentially the last thing with this is that Kubernetes is just an abstraction of the cloud. Like, there's lots of big words. I'm dyslexic, it's horrible. But the thing is, look for what you're comfortable with already. Your knowledge is already locked in here. Find the things that you're comfortable with, and then it unlocks the other parts.
And you know, it'd be super cool if anyone in here has like one part of security when it comes to hacking that you really like let's say you like scanning like API endpoints, like let us like ask a question on how your own work could translate to Kubernetes, because we'd love to help like people see their own techniques into this technology.
Hence why we got this talk, because we've got different minds, and so we've just been riffing over the last couple of days, and let's show. So I'm absolutely proud. This isn't anything to do with control plane. This is my own venture. Memory CI/CD build systems. I spent 5 weeks on the CSS alone. This is where our experiences become memories. It tells you what you need to know. So, should we go for a tour?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's have a look at our build status. Now you can see I've built this because it's currently down.
CI/CD pipelines never go down. So.
It's secure, it can't do anything. So let's go back.
If you don't have anything running, you can't exploit a vulnerability.
That's what I've been trying to say all the time.
If you throw out computers and feed the sharks the fiber optic cables, I think it'll probably be pretty good.
Yeah. But I wanted to add some experience as well to the endpoint. So I've created this interface here to be able to ping an IP address. So I'm going to just ping this address here, and I didn't set that, did I? I did not. So maybe, should we investigate?
Yeah.
Yes. So let's bring up our developer tools here, and let's reload this. So we can see we're doing a call to diagnostics.php. Yeah, we're going to speed run this a little bit. And what I would do here is if I right click on this, copy, and copy this code. Now we're going to come on to this screen. So I've been using mouse for the last few years, my touchpad. I've lost all knowledge of how to use it. Right, we're going to use the screen here. So I'm just using something called Tmux at the moment. If you're new to Tmux, give us a shout. It's a lovely thing to be able to do this stuff. Right, I'm just going to paste that call request. Look at all the text. If I hit enter, there we go. We've got the HTML response there, and we can see that we've got the ping.1.1.1. I think I'm Mr. 1. So let's have a look at this here. I need to zoom out a little bit for this bit. This just shows how tough this part is, just with the size of that request. But I'm just going to test this exploit here, because if it's sending across ping 1.1.1.1, well, what if I try to find out who I am?
And on top of what's going on, to give more guidance, so like the website, you can think of as like the point of entry for moving onto a container. So you, as a mitigation, just have basic network hygiene when it comes to saying what could be private or public. Because if we weren't able to get this entry point, then we wouldn't be able to give this demo.
Yeah, and so, sorry about my Tmux. There we go. So we can see here that we're Nginx. You can see it in the standard out here. Sorry, not standard out, from the HTML response. So instead of getting that ping response back, we're now finding out we're Nginx.
Andy, what version of Nginx? If you ever are on the server, you need to know what version.
Well, but I don't want to have to keep doing it like this.
Okay.
We want to do better.
Okay.
So should we go better, and then we can find out the version?
Yeah.
Cool, okay. So we're going to do a bit of bash. If you know anything about control plane, we love our bash. So, so I'm going to take this request that we have here. Again, I'm just going to have to take it out a little bit. And we're just going to prep this for a payload. So instead of having who am I, I'm just going to change this to double quotes because bash. And then I'm just going to put through $1. Now I'm just trying to prepare this because I want to make this as easy as possible for me to utilize. So let's zoom back in. Function exec bang bang to replay the last command, -k -s. So now I've built a function. So all I have to do is I run exec, and I ask who am I, and it's doing that now. So it's a lot easier for me just to start playing this game. So you wanted the Nginx version. Actually, before we do that, I think we can do one better.
Yeah, you don't even have to.
Yeah. That's, oh, no, I'm getting older, I'm tired.
No.
I can't keep typing all these things.
That's what you're on stage for.
I'm gonna keep typing. Type wrong. Cool, so we're gonna spin up a reverse shell. So we did this in our workshop this week. So I've got ngrok down here, hopefully.
And if you don't know ngrok, it's an alternative to DigitalOcean.
Yeah, it's going to give us this public endpoint here. So everyone, if you want to ruin our day, please take this information right now and please don't. I'll just buy you a drink afterwards. So please just don't mess with us for a moment. Cool. Okay, so I've got this public endpoint. Now I'm also using a tool called Penelope. Has anyone used Penelope before? Yes, we got one, yes. So Penelope, we're using it instead of NCAP. So that's just going to be listening out for us. So let's just check. So it's listening for reverse shells on localhost 31337. We've got ngrok, we have a public endpoint that will then traverse it to our localhost port. So now that we have that, and because we're trying to save time, I'm just going to go through my history quickly. And everyone can see what we were doing in the speaker room just a couple of moments ago when we were running through this. So we're going to run this command here to spin up our reverse shell. So we've used our exec function, and we can see that ncat's available to us, but we could not resolve hostname to TCP ngrok.io, which should not be sharing this information so loudly. But if you can't resolve the DNS, so we can resolve it this side. So I can get the IP address. So I can see that there. Again, no one look, just look away for a moment, please. Please don't host us. We got macarons if you want them. Take those instead.
IP addresses are the new private keys. We have that going for us.
So there we go. Oh, so something hopefully happened behind the scenes here, and it has. So what we've done there is that because we built up this function in Bash, we were able to set up to run ncat on wherever this Nginx is being hosted. And then it's connected to ngrok and it's come to our local host. And you can see in the top here that I've got bash. So now I can do who am I again? And then nginx, is it hyphen version?
I think it might just be the capital flag. If not, then we'll move on.
There we go. So this is the first part of our attack. This has got nothing really to do with Kubernetes at this point, I understand, but this is how we did this scenario. We wanted to be able to give this public endpoint. So, what have we learned? I'm trying to remember the slide now. What do we do? So we identified an injection expert on the CI/CD website. From that, we managed to run shell commands via curl to make sure that we had our attack available. We set up a reverse shell using ngrok and Penelope, and I think we did a job done well.
Great. And so this is where enumeration starts too. So you can start looking around the servers, see what's mounted, what kind of processes are running, if there's any weird applications or any type of flags or config files that won't be there. So now this is where any type of fun starts. You're trying to figure out what's on the server.
Yes, thank you. So what's our next slide? Oh, how do we prevent this? So at this point, this is just best practices on application. If we followed OWASP best practices, we shouldn't be able to send this command across. It should just be an IP address. It shouldn't be paying the IP address. That would have prevented it. Limit the tools within the image. We had netcat in there. We've got bash in there. If this is public facing, we don't want to give all these tools. And I understand that developers will say, well, we need to be able to debug this. Do better. You look at your logging, look at ways that you can put that there. I understand these things are difficult, but they're difficult for a reason.
But what's interesting about the logging thing too is you can have alternatives in netcat, and so if you are looking at logs for regex only for netcat, that might not be as comprehensive as the telemetry you want to know if this attack is happening. So if you do want to kind of recreate this demo, a cool thing would be doing this in a way that you don't use netcat, or maybe using it in a more creative WebSocket type of way.
So now we're going to go into the speed running Kubernetes. We've got our exploit, and now we're going to have a little bit of fun. Cool. Can everyone see that okay at the back? Cool, thank you very much. Control B, Z to go full screen. There we go. And think you might be able to see my IP address. I trust you. Right, so let's start having a look around here. What might we do when we get into some compute? We might look at the environment variables. But we have nothing too exciting at this point.
Also, if you're trying to figure out if you're in a container or not, you could look at the environment variables and you'll see like Kubernetes or Docker variable names. So that's like a really easy way to see if you're in a container or not, is running println.
Yeah, and so we can also run df, and we'll have a look at what we've got mounted. And here, we can see a couple of things. I'm going to hopefully not fall off, but we can see run secrets kubernetes.io service account. So when you're running Kubernetes, it's going to put a service account into the container that's running. So this is telling us that unless someone's doing something mischievous with us and ruining us, this is probably running in Kubernetes, which means I'm in a container at this moment in time. Well, that's what I'm assuming. And at this point, I'm running my emotional status. Remember, we've got a CI/CD memory, so maybe let's have a look at that. Should we have a look?
Yeah.
So let's go to, let's run ls emotional status.
You have the keyboard, I can stop you from anything type.
You just hit me on the head with that microphone. There we go, so we've got emotional status.
That's really important to have. That's a big part of enumeration.
So if we cut out what we currently have, so we've got some emotions here. We've got anger, fear, and disgust. I think we can all relate. And then, does anyone see anything that's missing from these emotions? Has anyone, and look, at this point, don't raise your hands, but I'm assuming that some people have got young kids in this room, and you probably watch lots of Pixar movies, and even if you don't have kids, I still watch Pixar movies anyway. But has anyone seen anything about like memories and the management of memories in the movie? Joey? Yeah, I got you.
Wait, isn't this what Malik is for? Managing memories?
Yeah.
This is the real binary exploitation.
So we started by trying to build this on Inception, but then we vetoed that and focused on Inside Out. We're missing two memories here. We're missing joy and sadness. And the reason we did memories, we did KubeCon, North America's security days last year, and we wanted to go all Hollywood, so we based all our scenarios on films. So this one is Inside Out with a little bit of Inception. Okay, we need to update our memories. So let me use Vim.
Well, first, should we see like what permissions we have and talk a bit about that one?
You know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm Leroy Jenkins. I don't know if you remember that.
Do you know World of Warcraft? Yes.
It's read only.
That's never stopped anyone before.
It's not going to stop us now.
Nope.
Yeah, so let's have a look at our permissions.
Are you saying that people would change permissions that they're not allowed to have? Crazy.
Who would do that? Gosh. Yes, so we can see here, we've got a file, but it looks like, it doesn't look like the file's there. And this is because, let's look behind the curtains a little bit, and because we need speed runs a little bit. This is a config map. This is Kubernetes. We're saying to Kubernetes, within this container, I want to have this current file, and these are the values that I want within it. So now, if we can't, and it's read-only by default, this is engineering principles, which I don't want to bore you with right now. I can bore it if you have more questions for me afterwards. Or for us afterwards, because you know now as well. So,
We should talk about config maps.
yes, you talk about config maps whilst I prepare.
Okay, cool. So Kubernetes, it has a database called etcd, which stores the state of the application. So every application has a configuration file, and config map will store the state of the cluster itself. So if you're able to edit the config to change your permissions, then you are able to change your permissions for the whole cluster. But if you are able to somehow patch kubeconfig, if you don't have the permission to do so, then you can edit the entire infrastructure of your application, which we're trying to get lateral movement, so we should be trying to patch this config file.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's...
Oh, one more thing. So in this demo, the application is looking to make sure all the fiber motions are there in order for us to even be able to do so.
Don't give too many spoilers just yet. But no, it's definitely, that's the point, is that we've got the wrong emotions, we need to update our emotions. And this is the purpose of this talk. We are biting the hand that feeds now. We're going to use Kubernetes to do what it thinks is doing best engineering best practices, and we're going to bend it to our will to be like, well, actually, we're going to get you to work for us now. So, whilst you did that, I just changed into our service account directory, and I can see that I've got a couple of files in here. I've got a CA cert, I've got a namespace, and I've got a token. So let's have a quick look at this token. So does anyone know what this token looks like, potentially?
JWT.
Yes! JWT for anyone watching on YouTube, hi in the future from the past. So hopefully I had this up here. I'll just use this one from earlier on because, again, we've been known each other since Wednesday. So if you look at the chart, we can see some leakage of information from this. Again, watch on recap if you want to zoom in. We've got a namespace of CI memories. We've got a secret name of MindReader token. We've got the service account name of MindReader. Memories.
Should we talk about service accounts and how they work a bit?
Well, I think this is a prime time too, so please do.
Yeah, so when Kubernetes is just YAML files, right? So when you create a role, you have a role binding YAML, and so you can have a service account that will be sometimes overly permissioned. And so, do you want to kind of talk more on how that relates to the demo?
We'll do it with our type now.
Okay.
And, but yes, we need to have identity within our cluster. Back to engineering principles. We follow least privilege, so we're not expecting to be able to do much with a service account. But anyone watch Rick and Morty in here? And I can just probably see, yes, I can see a couple of smiles. Mr. Misuse. I'm a big fan of Mr. Misuse. As soon as I saw Misuse with a box just hitting it, that's Kubernetes for me. Misuse is a container, and he's just creating more containers. This is what Kubernetes is. We need to give identities to these containers that are running, so we give them service accounts with no privilege. But if it's running in our cluster and it's managing our cluster, we might give some privilege to that service account. So let's have a look. Now, luckily when we built this scenario, we put kubectl in here for us because we're nice people like that.
So let's talk about kubectl, right?
Yeah.
So Kubernetes, for example, if you deploy it on Amazon with EKS, they'll automatically put the Go binaries in for you, and I'm sure with GCP it's something similar, right? And so if you are going to use Kubernetes at all, there are 3 main packages to know, and we'll go into this more in depth, but kubectl, kubeadm, and kubelit. So kubectl you can think of as the main CLI binary. That's how we're going to interact and kind of get information on our pods. So kubectl is just going to be the main binary we use for this, or what you will use too if you ever do this.
Yeah. Come play with Kubernetes. Right. But why didn't anyone say I wasn't sharing my screen? It's okay, Radical Panda, if you want some, tell me straight away. So, right, let's use kubectl version. So here you can see the version that we're running is 1.22, but the main thing here is the connection to the server was refused. So we're not connected to Kubernetes at this moment in time. We've got the client, but we can't connect to the API. Let's use that token. Let's see what we can do with that token.
And so there are 2 kind of tokens of note when I started looking at Kubernetes security. There's a kubeadm token, and then there's the service account tokens, and they're very different tokens as to what you can do with it. And so if you were to get a kubeadm token, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's when you can join the clusters.
Correct.
Right? And so if you have this token, you can't just create like a node and then join that to the cluster. This will be used for a different purpose, so that we could talk with the API server.
Absolutely. The kubeadm token is just about Borg again. It's simulating other compute into this cluster.
So don't confuse the kubeadm token and kubectl token, even though we just talked about both.
So we've got the kubectl command here. We're passing through the server. We're using the DNS because Kubernetes has its own DNS to be able to connect onto the API. We're passing through this token. We don't care if it's secure or not because, hey, I'm going to run version. So in running that, I can now connect on to the Kubernetes server. So now we know that we can connect onto the API endpoints.
And I think this is something to always bring up is that can you highlight the cat?
Yeah.
So if you look, this is always going to be something that you can try and hit. So the naming conventions are standardized. So when you start looking into Kubernetes security, try and look at the API endpoints and like what's at the end of each path. And then you'll be able to kind of start crafting your payloads.
And remember, Kubernetes is an abstraction of the cloud. This is just built on top of an API server. Has anyone played with an API server before? then you can play with Kubernetes.
Only 4 people have used an API.
It was a great party last night. I probably wouldn't even be able to remember my name right now. So I'm all about making things easier, so I'm just going to build this as an alias because every time I type K now, it's just going to run that. So if I do K version.
Also, this is how you get clout at companies. Like if you're writing kubectl in front of DevOps people, they kind of judge you. So always the K alias. Do that.
Yeah, we win favor. Okay, so now we've got to this point. We're connecting onto the Kubernetes server. Now this is the most powerful thing you can do. If you've ever got access to a cluster and you want to know what you can and can't do, use it kubectl, 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 or K in our case, q of can I -list. So what this does is it tells us what our service account is able to do within the cluster. In Coldwater, they had a great quote saying that we're all made of stars, our backs shouldn't be. Role-based access control is what says what the service account can and can't do. And from this, we're very limited to what we can do. Just as an example, if I try to get pods, we're not kubectl, we are K, get pods, it's forbidden. But this is kind of a good error because I'm still connected to the API. I'm getting some leakage here because I can see I cannot connect to the namespace default. Quick thing, Kubernetes namespaces is just a virtual cluster. It's to give a little area. You might have dev, database, production, Lewis, V. Those are namespaces that we might have. So we need to try to figure out that other namespace. And for brevity of time, can anyone kind of remember what the namespace might be? From like 5 minutes ago?
CI memories, let's move on.
Yes, thank you. We saw it within the drafts. There's another place that we can see it. So we can also, I'm disconnected. That's okay, because I can get down here. I say that's okay, please don't, my Wi-Fi's just gone down. It's come back, all right. But it's lucky because hopefully we've been able to manage this train of attack. No, my website, it's gone down again. Okay. Would you like to do some slides for a moment?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, actually, it's come back. Demo gods. But this is the beauty of what we've done with our attack. We've put it into a bash function. We've got Penelope running there. You can see we've got a new session. If anyone's messing with me, you've won this time, hey, you're wasting your own time right now. But yes. Where did we get to? Okay, we were looking at namespace. We know our namespace, so let's move on from that. So we had CI memories. So if we run this command, it's because we've lost our alias. We'll update that. So instead, because we've had to reconnect, we've lost our environment because we can't actually write to our home directory, so we can't persist anything when we get disconnected. So what we've done there is that I've just done -n CI memories. So any request that I do now to kubectl, I'm going to use the CI memories namespace. So if I look at this list now, all of a sudden I can see I can do something with config maps. So on the config maps, I can get, list, patch, and update. Now the reason we want to do that is because if we can't update this file on this machine, let's update this file on Kubernetes. And we will do this as a little bit of speedrun to get some more time. But if I do k get, there we go. I've just got a load of stuff back from there. If I get kubectl, get config memories, config maps, emotions are running high. So I can see here that I've got my emotions in YAML. Who doesn't have our emotions in YAML? So we can see that we've got current emotions, anger, fear, disgust, probably a lot more fear actually right now after that issue. So let's look to edit it because we can patch.
So part of what this also requires is having domain knowledge and knowing that you need to put in those two emotions too. And that's something that you'll see like when it comes to any application that you're targeting. But we need to look at the config map, apply domain knowledge, and then see that we're missing key info in the config map. And now we opened up Vim, and we couldn't see that we could edit the config map. And so we are now using kubectl to edit the config map. And that'll fix the CI/CD system in case you're a little lost right now, and that's just the bullet points.
Yeah, we'll go through this with slides in a moment. So yes, everything you just said, thank you for that. If you saw on the screen whilst I was doing, I was updating our emotions. So if we look at editing our emotions right now, you can see our emotions are now joy and sadness. Now this is key thing with Kubernetes. Kubernetes, as we'll see in a moment, it's got a brain. It's got where all the data is stored, and it's got a state stored in that data. You've changed that config map, and so Kubernetes is going to be like, okay, so someone's updated this. This is what I need to be running across the estate. So what we're hoping now is during that time to let it just sort itself out. If we go and have a look at our current emotional state, I hope you got some joy. I hope you've Marie Kondo'd this right now. So, no. Okay, we're just going to have to kick the tires a little bit. Let's try again. Okay, that's. Actually, if I just. Why like demos? Why? There's even something right next door, but we're not doing this right. Okay, well actually this is bizarre at this point, so we might go to our slides whilst
Did we do a new token when we did kubectl?
No, it's because I'm not cool enough. I need to stay calm. I need to trust my cluster because it's updated it since I've had my little panic, and now I've made myself look for that.
It was a mistake to us all.
Time is important. So right, you can see that we've updated that there. So let's go back to our website momentarily. Let's have a look at how our CI/CD pipelines go getting on. So let's look at those status. Clunk. The machine is now perfectly balanced and running properly. All sockets are now neatly aligned. So in there, we've gone and we've updated Kubernetes. We've updated this config map. Actually, we'll go back to slides at this point. That's not slides. This one's slides.
Okay, so like Lewis alluded to, the Kubernetes is just an API server, right? And so it has a brain called etcd. So if you are able to mess with etcd, then you can change any configuration about your cluster. You're basically on like the AWS console itself, configuring and changing any type of network interfaces or anything there. So there are three main binaries. You need to know them. So it's like kubectl, kubelit, kubeadm. Kubectl, like we said before, there we go, is the interaction with the application. This is the main CLI binary that you're going to use. Kubelit helps with the identity within the node to interact with the rest of the infrastructure. And so you can get information on the workloads by using kubelit, and so that's another form of enumeration. And so with kubeadmin, you can add pods to the cluster, and that also relies upon a token mechanism too. And so what's really interesting too, which we talked about in the training, I tried to use like a post request instead of like just using kubectl for a moment. And so the API server is obviously an API by definition, so you can send HTTP requests with like just curl and like a post. And if you have the right parameters, you could then just get pods with a post instead of relying on Go binaries. So, okay, so we're going to talk about like.
I think at this point we're just going to do the last phase of our attack, and then we're going to go on to that those slides because.
No, for sure.
So we've updated the cluster. You can see that my session has disconnected. So again, we saw that earlier on, so let's just reconnect our session.
This is why you have good reverse shell management tools like Penelope. Shout out to that repo.
Yeah, honestly, and it's got emojis in it, like, just put emojis in everything, please. So, including slide decks. So, I've been able to spin up my reverse shell again. Actually, I think we're doing good on time, so let's just see here. If I do a df, we can see our emotional status again. We can see secrets, Kubernetes.io service account, but we can also see there's something called a sock.docker. Usually this would be a docker.sock, but then for our CTF we thought, you know what, we're going to play with you. Sock.docker.
So is a socket always going to be there with Docker now? Has there been any changes?
Great point. Now, the reason why we might, you don't want to put Docker sockets in your containers. The reason why people might have done this previously is because, if you're running your CI/CD pipeline with containers, then you probably want to build more containers. Previously, a container can build a container, it just can do it. So what you could do is you can mount the Docker socket from a machine that's running into the container, and you could use that to build containers. Now, there's a little thing about Docker. It's running as root.
Docker runs as root. Spoiler.
So you can potentially leverage that. Instead, nowadays as well, there's tools like Canico, like a Tecton. You don't need the Docker socket anymore to be able to build these images, and that was developed because of what we're about to do now. Okay. Is everyone having a good time first of all? Because it's a little bit quiet.
We should.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, we should hear that.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I'm stopping the mic. So, okay, right, we've got our Docker socket there. If I do Docker PS, because we left Docker in there as well, you can see that it can't find what it's expecting to find while running docker.sock. So let's run docker-h Unix. So, what this means is that, as well, when you run Docker locally, you have a client and you have a daemon running on your machine. If you install Docker, that's what you have. You can use the client and you can connect onto another Docker socket, wherever it may be, as long as you've got network access to it using that. So you can see what's running on there. So now if I do that with a PS,
Go to the PS. You just enter and then you do PS.
Oh yeah, thank you. Cool, yes. So let's just alias this one out. Yep.
I think Kubernetes is like aliasing.
Still.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh yes.
Good insight.
We've got dropset control pane if you want to help me. So now we can do Docker PS and we can see all what we have running on our cluster, on our node, sorry. These are all the containers running on there. If you look at the top, we can see CI memories, that's where we're in. But because we've got access to the Docker socket, we can also run our own containers now. And remember, because we can run Docker as root, you can do run, interactive, remove. We're using privileged. If you're at training, that means essentially you just remove all the sandbox element, use the machine. We're going to connect the process ID namespace host, and we're going to use custom Cormac's container image. So you pull that down.
So we're able to run a privileged container on the host itself due to having that Docker socket available. So like that, if you missed that was a pivotal thing. And so if you're able to get something like Docker socket, then you're able to run a command like this, but you usually wouldn't have been able to unless you have socket.
Absolutely. So now if we list out, can I clear this? Yes. So if I can't do that then. So if I list this out, this root file system within this container, this isn't the container's root file system, this is the virtual machine that's running this container, this file system. So at this point, as an attacker, I'd probably look at I've got root of a machine. If I got root of a machine, that means I can just look at all the processes. So all of a sudden, I can see everything that's running on this machine. I've run the wall. But if I disconnect, so if I go back into my container, if I run the same command there, you can see that the container can only see its own processes that it has running.
Something that's interesting too is you can also see net count on the host, so you can actually see like an SH getting passed in.
Yeah. Right, we've only got a little bit of time left, so we're going to have to go back to slides, but I'll let you then go through your slide deck.
Okay, we're going to do this really fast then. So I came to KernelConf because I wanted to know more about operating systems, specifically namespaces and C groups, but we didn't ever talk about that ever. So containers are just namespaces. It's a fancy way of just saying namespaces, but what are namespaces? So it's a virtual view of isolated system resources. That's the definition that you would get from like Red Hat sysadmin manual. And so this is important from an attacker's perspective because instead of having a flat structure or resource allocation and access, now you have something that's somewhat segregated. And so if we have less process isolation, then you will have more access from one resource that might not need something, right? So like, why would a file share system need access to a network adapter that it may or may not need? And so kind of stopping implementing namespace isolation is a way to mitigate on some bugs. For example, CVE 2021-28691, that was a high CVS bug. It was a use after free vulnerability in the Linux kernel. And so that process from like a file share system, in this example, would need a network adapter access. So when you're going through your own CI/CD pipelines, it's really important to kind of see how is namespace isolation and organization in your own images that you're using in your deployments, and is there anything that you could break up? Are there any processes that you can remove? And exactly what has access to network interfaces is a really good way to start. So let's move on. Also, this is okay. This is a really good talk about just professional conversation there. And so C groups are going to be inherent to understanding what a namespace is, right? So C groups are a collection of processes that an admin or whoever will define with parameters as to what resources can be accessed. So C groups, you can think of, I like to think of it as a subset of namespaces. And so we need that type of functionality when it comes to C groups because we want to isolate processes. We don't want the noisy neighbor problem when it comes to resources on many clusters. And so a good thing about C groups, you might think to yourself, how does a child process get the properties of a parent process? And so C groups kind of help organize that hierarchical grouping with an organized behavior. So overall, namespaces limit how much you can see, but what happens if we can change what we see, that's where you get root. And C groups limit how much you can access. So, it's all about, it's authentication, authorization, seeing and accessing, very different, but that's the point of namespaces and C groups, processes, you get to see stuff, you get to access stuff. Process is like the buzzword here. So quickly move on. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh no, yeah, just this one. It's not a container state. It's a process and wants to be free. So we did a container breakout. How can we prevent this again? So that was OWASP best practices, container development best practices, multi-stage builds. So just making sure people don't have tools in their images. That you're pushing out. Container runtime, there's new things with Rust, there's new runtimes with Rust. Look towards Firecracker GVIs like Kata containers. It's constantly evolving. Sorry, I realize that we're a bit late now, so we're going to have to start to just go through this one. So Docker sockets, we utilize that to be able to root to get privileged. We've got some diagrams here which we'll share. I think we don't have enough time.
Yeah, so basically the TLDR, right?
Yeah.
So like you got etcd, it talks to two components kind of, and then you have a container within a pod, within a namespace, within a node. And so we have the server level and we have the application level itself. And then we have our reverse shell now, so this is how each, the API server that's always there is going to talk to our application that's always there. And then now we have the attacker in the environment. And so then we threw our privileged container with PID host. So now we're running a privileged container on a host. So that's like a container breakout, literally. And so now we're on the host. And so this is basically just showing we have our infrastructure. And now we have root due to the privileged container. And then if we, can I quickly go to mitigations or not? Might be over.
15 seconds.
Okay. Host level kernel configurations, right? Like CFI enablement, stack canary token stuff. Don't open your security groups to your clusters to quad 0, 0000, subnet 0, bad subnet. Don't use it for your clusters. And so a good engineering paradigm is having an intermediary pod between the website container or the application and the entry point into etcd, which is like the database. So yeah, having a message queue container, it just makes an attacker do one more pivoting. So defense in depth.
Yeah, and we'll find this throughout the rest of today if you want to discuss more. We did a show and tell of it. Right, quickly, don't think what I'm about to say. Can you all just shout thank you, James? I'm like 3. Please, just for me, I'll buy you a drink. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, James.
Cheers. You know, on the this scenario, I wrote this with James Cadbury-Prance. He is freaking phenomenal. He's done a Dirty Pipe vulnerability recently, so follow his Twitter. He's going to be sharing that soon. And also, thank you, V. You've been phenomenal. We've only met on Wednesday. We've been working on the slide deck in the speaker room for the last 2 days. Sorry to all the other speakers who wanted silence.
We didn't really have time to go through slides, so find us if you ever want to talk
yeah, we'll be here.
content in depth.
You can easily find me because I'm the socially awkward one. And yes, Cycle Planet, these are all the people if you're interested in what we talked about, standing on the shoulders of giants. You'll have access to these slides. You can click on all of them. And then finally, I'll tell you what it's all about. It's all about punk rock. So thank you ever so much. I've been Lewis.
Hi, I'm V.
And I'm at Control Plane. And if you do have questions, we don't have enough time, but you can find us here, there, somewhere else. I don't know. But thank you ever so much for your time.